Well, moving right along, we're now into our seventh episode with Lloyd DeYoung. We may add more numbers as we go along, but we certainly want to uh, unpack Sharia law. And Lloyd is our expert in Sharia. One of the things that have come up, Lloyd, that I'd like you to really unpack for us concerns this idea of doubting in Islam. Are Muslims permitted to doubt, or must I just take it as given? Because one thing that we have seen, there's never any discussion on any of these laws within Islam. I don't see Muslims discussing them. I don't see them actually looking at the relevancy. We do it all the time, and they're kind of aghast that we should even bring this up. And I've always scratched my head on that. I say, hold on a minute. Don't you doubt this? Don't you see its irrelevancy? Aren't you aware that it doesn't make sense for the 21st century? Shouldn't you have discussions? Aren't you debating within your own community on these categories? This, I just don't see in Islam. No debate, no discussion, no working through or trying to understand how it's to be applied. It's just given, memorized, and they obey. I mean, the word Muslim is someone who obeys, someone who submits. The word Islam means to submit. So you can see from their own category, they don't ever even put it just doesn't come up in their schema of things. So where does that come from? Help me here. Why this non-doubting that we see in Islam?
Okay, I will mention the law specifically, but I do want to mention that no one single law usually has a definitive role within any given Islamic behavior or belief. There are normally, as I say, multiple overlapping intentions, laws, doctrines that all coincide. Like I mentioned earlier, slander, right, ghibba, and tale-bearing, namima, and there are other things, but I will specifically go to the law of doubting, the ruling on doubting. So shall I share my screen, Jay, and just show that to people so they can see what Muslims are required to believe? Doubt is illegal in Islam, and whatever causes doubt. Now, this would be under the section on slander and tale-bearing, where they will discuss in detail the actions to take. There's also another doctrine called commanding the right and forbidding the wrong, which also keeps Islam in check, which keeps Muslims in check, which is a set of behaviors and doctrines. But also this is where they keep non-Muslims in check, utilizing this doctrine. It's the fundamental underlying doctrine of everything in Islam. In fact, jihad is a sub-doctrine of the doctrine of commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. But let's go to this for now. This is Reliance of the Traveller, section A 4.2. As for the basic obligation of Islam and what relates to tenets of faith, it is adequate for one to believe in everything brought by the messenger, not to pick and choose, to believe in everything. That would mean the Quran and the Sunnah. Do understand the Quran and the Sunnah are both abrogated. The Hadith are abrogated, the Quran are abrogated. In fact, they abrogate each other. And the only way to sort this mess out is within the Sharia, which is where this mess has been sorted out. And the only one who can take you there is the scholar. So therefore you submit to a scholar, right? You follow a scholar. Now, you are to believe in everything brought by the messenger with absolute conviction, free of any doubt. And who does this is not obliged to learn evidence.
Oh.
So the Prophet did not require of anyone anything but what we have just mentioned. So no knowledge, but perfect certainty and belief, free of learning evidence.
All right, so that's fascinating. So you don't have to, whoever these mujtahids, they don't have to prove what they're saying. You just memorize it and obey it. They don't demand evidence for whether it's relevant or whether it's applicable or whether or not even makes any sense. You just accept it as what this is stipulating.
The Quran says we hear and obey.
Okay. Wow.
And who transmits that to you? The Imams. See, it says here, what befits the common people and the vast majority of those learning or possessing sacred knowledge, that's the Sharia, is to refrain from discussing the subtleties of scholastic theology. In other words, do not indulge in discussing the fine points of your religion. Do not. Unless, because if you do that, corruption, difficult to eliminate, will find its way into your basic religious conviction. It is fitter for you to confine yourself to contentment with the above-mentioned absolute certainty. In other words, introspection and discussion and investigation will lead to doubt. And thus,
This sounds like my parents when I was a teenager. They would say almost the same thing. They would have loved us to have referred to, and they would have looked right at us and said, "Yep, you just listen. It's not. Don't ask me why. Just do what I say." Is what they used to say, and that's exactly what that's saying. It's just like a parent scolding their child.
Yeah,
Don't ask for any evidence. Don't tell me. Don't make me help you or help you understand the reason behind it. Just obey.
correct. In,
Fascinating.
in fact, let me add to just one more law, A7.2, unlawful knowledge. Let's look at knowledge that is unlawful, illegal, haram in Islam. For instance, sorcery. Now, when I say sorcery is illegal in Islam, it's illegal for the lay Muslim. It is not illegal for the upper scholars, but that's a different story for another day. But understand, sorcery, and number two in that list, Jay, what is this word here? Number two?
Philosophy.
Philosophy is illegal for lay Muslims to discuss and learn.
Hold
And
on.
it's lumped in with sorcery, magic, and astrology.
But philosophy, some of the greatest philosophers are Muslims. So I don't understand that.
Philosophy is unlawful knowledge. It is illegal. It's lumped in with sorcery, magic, and astrology in Islam. Don't
Fascinating.
think.
Fascinating, because some of your biggest names, all of the biggest names you have in Islam are philosophers. They are the ones who then take it. And a philosophy is to take what God's knowledge is and apply it to mankind. It's taking it and helping to understand it, to unpack it so that we can use it. How can this
Don't
not?
understand,
But it also brings in doubt. You're right. And this would, so any philosophy that would bring in doubt, or they would say they would actually question the precepts that the mujtahids have put together, that would be haram.
correct. So hopefully this clarifies the mindset, the behavior. Hopefully this gives you, as I said, it's descriptive of the behavior. It gives you explanatory power. It explains the culture, the beliefs, the attitudes, the behaviors, the
Wow.
mindset.
Well, I mean, stop and think. What you're bringing up, this to me is incredulous. If you want a system that you want to impose on a people, especially a people who are when it's a new idea, these are new injunctions, these are new laws that make no sense, and in some ways, like today, are completely irrelevant for today. Cutting off the hands, whipping the adulterers, killing those who have changed their belief or who insult the prophet, as we did in the last episode, killing them. No if, buts, or ands. How do you impose that on people? Make sure they don't ever disagree. Make sure they don't ever question. Make sure they don't even have a discussion on it. Eradicate any evidence. Don't demand, in fact, don't give any evidence as to why you're saying this. Just make it just make a rule about it that if you do question this, you can be, and the punishment for doubting is what?
And take you aside and read the tafsir to you if you have doubts. He's allowed, in fact, so on that, a technicality would be that Muslims are not allowed to read the tafsir for themselves. It must be interpreted through an imam. This means that a tafsir is of a lower level of knowledge, which a lay Muslim can learn. Remember I mentioned there are layers of knowledge. There are 4 levels of knowledge, 2 divisions and 4 levels. This means the tafsir sits at the very lowest level of knowledge in Islam. And if you have too much doubt, you become an apostate. And of course, we know what the penalty for that is.
Okay. So it eventually leads to death, is what you're saying. Well, that's fascinating, because if you want to impose a system on a people and you want to make sure that there is no comeback, no recourse, then of course you put in a law like this. You must not doubt, that it is illegal to doubt. The Reliance of the Travel, which is the manual for the Shafi school, Grace even stipulates that we who are putting these laws into place, we don't even have to give you evidence. We don't have to explain it. This is worse than my parents. And when I was a teenager, they never explained it. They just said, do it, because they didn't want to take the time. Now, today, as an adult myself and as a parent, I can see why they demanded that I don't run out the door every time I wanted to, or that I don't play with guns anytime that I want to pick up. Of course, we never had guns in our family. So you can see why these are a way of shutting down any discourse, shutting down any discussion, shutting down any debate, and shutting down any criticism of these very laws. which is exactly what we're bringing up. The fact that so many of these laws are incredulous and absolutely, I would say, just dangerous. They're so dangerous because you're going to be losing people's lives. That you will be killed if you criticize the prophet in a Muslim context. You will be killed if you decide that you don't like Islam and want to leave it. So there are so many of these laws that need to be discussed and need to be debated and need, yes, to be changed if they're not relevant. But this shuts that all down. You can't even doubt it. You can't even go that far. You can't even come up with some queries to that point. So you can see this isn't a totalitarian system. This is how totalitarian systems work, and the only way that they can function. I remember Yusuf Qaradawi, he mentioned this, and he says this famous quote that he gave back, I think it was in 2015, so not too many years ago. And he said, Islam would not exist without the law of apostasy. Without the law of apostasy, there would be no Islam today. We would have lost all our members if people had the choice to leave. Well, with these kind of laws, which are horrendous and heinous and dangerous, you can see most of Islam would have been depleted by now. There would be no Muslims left if they had any choice to doubt. Eradicating doubt and just accepting it because it's the way we have written it, we have said so, in one fell swoop, they won't have any doubt. If there's no doubt, there's no apostasy. If there's no apostasy, Islam still survives. They absolutely need these laws. Well, great stuff. Thanks so much, Lloyd. This has been fun talking with you. A lot of how Muslims act today is becoming clearer and clearer because of what you're helping us with. God bless you. This is Jay and Lloyd. Over and out.
Goodbye, everyone.